Here at the Albany Civil Rights Institute, we're certainly glad to see that you would not let the weather stop you from coming. We're very fortunate this evening to have with us Brother Ben Crump, who I will introduce later. But to get us started, anytime you have a good gathering, you need to get the right setting, the right mood. And to put us there, I'm going to ask Sister Rutha Harris to come up and grace us with a number to get your mind and your heart right for the message we're going to receive later. Please help me welcome her.
Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Walk with me. While I'm on this freedom journey, I want Jesus to walk with me. Hold my hand, Lord. Hold my hand. Hold my hand, Lord. Hold my hand. While I'm on this freedom journey, I want Jesus to walk with me. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. While I'm on this freedom journey, I want Jesus, I need Jesus, can't do it by myself, I need Jesus, I need him to walk with me. Amen.
Amen. I see we have some preachers in the house. So I guess it would be appropriate to let the church say amen. Amen. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing a friend, a colleague, a fraternity brother who has distinguished himself in the field of law. And he is a great lawyer, but he's even more so a better person. There's an old saying that people don't know how much you know, don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Ben Crump has demonstrated not only what he knows, but how much he cares in both his legal and philanthropy efforts. You've read most of his bio in the paper. You know all about the different organizations he's a member of and the different causes that he's championed and the different cases that he's won. So you did not come here tonight to hear me introduce him. You came to hear from him. So if you would join me now, please welcome my friend, my brother, and your speaker, Brother Ben Crump.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm very honored to be here with you this evening in Albany. Ms. Harris, yes, sir. It's hard to follow you. But hopefully God will help me as we just sung to follow such a beautiful rendition. Please give her a round of applause. Now, I would be remiss if I did not thank Brother Frank Wilson for getting me here to Albany, because as Attorney Thomas and my law clerk Caesar, they didn't think it robbery to drive me from Tallahassee. And as I was telling Brother Holt, I done got a little spoiled. I fly everywhere, so it was interesting coming through that liquid sunshine on the back roads of Georgia to be here with you. But people like Frank Wilson are special people. I remember some years ago, George Bush, when he was president, the senior, talked about 1,000 points of light in every community that are unsung in many regards, but without them, America wouldn't be what it is. So I thank you, Frank Wilson, for being one of those 1,000 points of light. And to all those robust men in the purple blazers, my fraternity brothers, the Omega Psi Phi fraternity, I'm very happy that you all are here. And certainly to the board of the Civil Rights Institute for allowing Frank to do the work he do and have these important conversations. We thank you all, board members. To the district attorney, Greg Edwards, where you at? Is he still here? Mr. DA, I'm gonna make it public what I said to you in private. I travel all over these United States, and Lord knows Black History Month, I think I may be home 5 days this month from going everywhere. And it's not often that I come across a district attorney who is African American. And so, it is very special that you are in the position that you are in, so you can make sure that we know the sensitivity that must go into the job. And what I said privately to him, boy, we could have used you in Sanford, Florida. To the sheriff of this great county, I'm honored to be here in your county, and thank you for your presence. Let's give him a round of applause. I look, and I mean this, and some of you I don't know, and some of you I do know. When I look at these young men, you're reminded what the fight is for. This is our future. This is our future, and it really is about them. So when we take these matters that I'm about to talk about this evening, people say a lot, but at the end of the day, it's about these fine young men whose dreams are just as important as any other children in America. Their lives are just as valuable. And so that's why we fight. And I love the fact that I saw Brother Miller, and I asked his son's name, Mason. And you look at that and you say, man, what could be? What could be? And you think about all these cases that we've done where people lost their children, and you just speculate what could have been. Yes, sir. What could have been. And certainly to Mr. Melvin and Lula George, y'all raise your hand. I had the fine pleasure of working with their daughter for many years in Atlanta, so you all report back to Alma. No matter what anybody else say, y'all report back I did good. And so I think we've taken care of most of the housekeeping matters. Mr. Wilson, now I would like to indulge you, not long, if you would allow me to have a very frank conversation with you. It is Black History Month, and as Attorney Thomas knows, we really have been covering just not the country but the world. I just was in Morocco, in the cities of Casablanca, Rabat, and Marrakesh, speaking. And what was amazing to me, and I'll get off track just a little bit, you never know, you really never know, Albany, how God is going to use you. That's right. You never ever know. And I think back to almost 2 years this time, a little less than 2 years, when I got that call from Trayvon's parents. And I could not predict, Brother Hope, you know, nobody could have told me everything that happened in the matter, in the journey for justice for Trayvon Martin, that it would become the #1 news story in the world, and that some 2 years later, after we took up the cause of Trayvon, we will go to Northern Africa and Southern Europe. And when I got up before crowds of Africans and Europeans, that they would chant, "I am Trayvon." Don't tell me what God can do. I mean, you just never know. You never really know. And so whether we were in Princeton and Jersey City, New Jersey, and scheduled to be in Miami and Pittsburgh and Indiana, and all these places over to San Francisco during Black History Month. And it's going to be a simple message I'm going to be telling that I'm sharing with you all tonight in Albany. And it's really this message that's wrapped up in some of the iconic figures that you have in this institute on that wall. Great heroes that we stand on the shoulders of, the legal giants like C.B. King and Constant Motley. You know, it's those heroes that let us know all things are possible, because as I was sharing with Frank, you know, these regular people doing extraordinary things, just ordinary people. That's what it's about. And it's not anything that I'm doing that nobody else here can't do. Everybody has the ability to make a difference. They just first have to have the courage. They first have to have the courage. I want to use for the topic of my conversation with you all, Albany, the measure of a man. The measure of a man. You know, Dr. Martin Luther King said, Brother Davis, that it is not where you stand at in times of comfort and convenience that matter, but it's where you stand at in times of conflict and controversy. That is the measure of a man. And I think when you try to break it down in its most simplistic terms, what do we mean when we say measure? What are we really doing when we try to talk about the measure of the man? What we're really looking at is the value of the man. And when we say man, we're not talking about it in a gender specific, we're using it in a greater sense of humankind. The value of you, the individual in this life. What is your value? And you know, when you think about value, you start thinking about commodities and you start thinking about monetary terms. I think Warren Buffett, who is somebody who deals with money, says value, he defines it best, I think. And he breaks it down like this, Brother Hope. He says, when you go buy a stock, if you were to go buy a McDonald's stock, a Coca-Cola stock, and you got it for $10 today, and in 10 years it was gonna still be $10, then that really wouldn't be of any value. So what is our value? I tell you, brothers and sisters here tonight, our value as people, as citizens, as a society, our value is in these young people. What will our investment be in 20 years from now? And so if we can't understand that our value isn't really about us, it's about what we create and what we leave behind after we leave this earth, then we don't understand what Dr. Martin Luther King was talking about when he said the measure of a man. You see, when Tracy Martin called me on that March of 2012, a few days after his son Trayvon had been killed, it was one of those things where the bell rang, metaphorically. And even though nobody was watching, God was watching and saying, Ben Crump, are you going to answer the bell? Are you going to answer the bell? And you know, Attorney Ellis, you all know when you first get those calls and they tell you the facts, and I mean, it was heartbreaking. When you think about Tracy Martin, voice on that phone, just the hopelessness. And you have children, you can only imagine your son walking home from the 7-Eleven. And that's what he says. He's on the phone with some other lawyers and they call me and they say, Attorney Crump, we need you to get involved in this case. And I say, okay, what's the case? And I mean, they just kept blowing me up. I was in court, I stepped out and they said, well, we have his father on the phone, he can tell you. And Ms. Harris, Mr. Martin says, my son was 17 years old. He was walking home from the 7-Eleven. He only had a bag of Skittles and a can of iced tea. And some neighborhood watch person with a 9mm gun shot him in the heart and killed him. And I stepped back for a second. I said, hold on. Let me make sure I understand these facts. Your son was walking home unarmed, had Skittles, and a neighborhood watch volunteer had a gun? You know, I said, and he killed him, and he admitted he killed. I said, you don't need me on this case. They're gonna arrest him. You know, you don't need me because, Mr. DA, we're lawyers, we're officers of the court. We see people in our community arrested with no evidence at all on an innuendo, a hint. Somebody said they saw him. I mean, no evidence whatsoever. And here we are, we have an unarmed kid dead on the ground and the gun in the hand of the killer, and you said you're not gonna arrest him? And so I told Mr. Martin, take a couple days, you don't need me on this case. And I really believe that in my heart because we want to believe the system works equally for all of us. You really want to believe that. And Mr. Martin said, they said they were not going to arrest him. I said, just give it a couple of days. And 2 days went by. And Mr. Martin called me back and he said, see, Attorney Crump, I told you they said they were not going to arrest him because this thing called stand your ground law. And at that point, I had to make a decision. I had to make a decision. And, you know, I talked to my law partner, Darryl Parks, and Darryl said, you know, Crump, we're going to spend a lot of money, a lot of resources, a lot of time, and at the end of the day, the police probably still won't arrest him. And, you know, I said, Darryl, you're probably right. But if we don't do nothing, you know, where did God bless us with these law degrees? Why did he give us this talent? You know, if we don't, Jamie Foxx has been very involved in the Trayvon Martin case, and he said something I thought was very profound. He said that, what good is having influence if you don't use it when it matters? Think about that. Some of our best, most able people see things happen to our children in our communities and they look the other way. Because most of the time, all it takes is courage to stand up. And I'm a living, breathing example, brothers and sisters. When you step out and just try to do the right thing, God takes over from there. I mean, and it was one of those situations where we stepped out, and it wasn't no guarantee that you were going to be successful. You just step out and you try to help somebody. I wanted to help Tracy and Sabrina. I understood that there was their baby lying on the ground today, and if we don't do anything, it could be your baby tomorrow. And so we have to stand up because it is about our value as a people. You all remember Alex Haley roots? You all may, and some of you remember the movie, some of the young people don't know what I'm talking about. But I remember reading the book, and one of the big things in that book is when Alex Haley, main character Kuta Kinte, he takes his baby, Kizime, when she's a baby, and he holds her up to the heavens in the moonlight, and he says, "Behold, the only thing greater than thyself." Because it is about the value. The only thing greater than you is what you produce. And if you don't fight for your children, what will you fight for? And so it really, that's what it is about. I think about Kendrick Johnson a little closer to home in Valdosta, Georgia. And I think about how the rules just seem to be different when it's our children laying on the ground. I'm asked a rhetorical question, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, but can you imagine, as President Obama said, if Trayvon Martin had killed unarmed George Zimmerman, would he have been given the benefit of the stand your ground law? And we know within a shadow of a doubt what would have happened. Kendrick Johnson, when you think about it, it breaks your heart. It breaks your heart. He went to school with a book bag. The next day, he's returned home in a body bag. And the explanation given to his parents is that he climbed in a rolled up wrestling mat, got stuck, and stopped breathing and died. That's the explanation. And they gave that in a couple of days and expected them to accept it. And they always say our community will rush to judgment. And Trayvon, 2 days, they said we weren't going to arrest George Zimmerman. And Kendrick Johnson, 2 days, they said it was an accident, we ain't going to arrest nobody. And you just scratch your head and you say on Kendrick Johnson's matter, it defies all logic, science, and common sense. I heard Frank say earlier today, I may be some dumb, but I ain't plumb dumb. Did I get it right, Frank? And think about it. For us to accept that as a community, I mean, the fact that when you think about Kendrick Johnson's case, his fingernails missing, his clothes missing, his vital organs missing. You know, it really, as a parent, and I have a young daughter, and you just think what Jackie and Ken must go through when they dug him up from the ground, and instead of his organs being there, they had newspaper, so we can't even retest the organs to help us get to the truth. And you know, Mr. DA, the pathologists tell me, you know, once you die and the blood stops pumping, then the organs are going to be pretty much preserved to what it is. So if those organs were there, it would help give us information to know what happened to this child. And his parents have to fight so hard for simple justice. Nothing extraordinary, just simple justice. You know, Attorney King and I are having to file all kind of lawsuits and pleadings just to try to get to the truth. We have to make the government fight when it's our children. Stuff they do so readily, so easily for other people's children. When it's our children, now they'll quickly charge our children with a crime. And so we got to make them be responsible when our children are lying on the ground just as much as they are responsible when they think our children committed a heinous act. I mean, we don't want anything more for our children than anybody else want for their children. Not one thing more. Simple just, and you can just go on and on and on with the cases. I'm handling a matter in Los Angeles, Alicia Thomas, where they got video of her being handcuffed and shackled, and they say they kicked her and they choked her and they dragged her in a prone position, and they got a video of it, but yet they won't release the video. And you say, wow, if this was anybody else but somebody from our community, would that happen? And so we have to fight for simple justice, but more importantly, we have to fight for our young people's lives, and we have to tell everybody. You know, James Baldwin talked about go tell it on the mountain. Well, we got to go scream it on the mountain. Our children matter. Our children matter. Our children matter. And when I met these young men, they all told me the things they wanted to be. Only one of them said he wanted to be an athlete, but he had a good backup plan. And, you know, these children have their dreams. And every time you have one of these children being killed in these just completely mind-boggling ways, you scratch your head and you say, what if? And it's all our responsibility. I know I talked to the news reporters today, Frank, and they said, well, what can we tell young black children, young black males to do? I said, hold on. We can't blame the victim. And we know we have our challenges. We know the black on black crime, and we deal with that. It's cause and effect, and we get into that how our systems are made and how it is administered. We get it. But make no mistake about it, these 2 points I must tell you all, and now I'm putting on my lawyer hat and my social science hat. Make no mistake about it, we cannot let them blame the victim.
Yes, sir.
We can, you know, when I do think about Trayvon, I do think about these startling facts. And this is what I told them at Harvard, I told them everywhere I went. You hear that 911 call, that objective call with your own ears, and you hear what his killer says. His killer says, he's running away, he's getting away. That's what he said. So Trayvon is running away from this stranger who he does not know. And then 2 minutes and 41 seconds later, he has a hole in his heart, and his killer says, self-defense. Now, what kind of sense does that make? I mean, it just defies all kind of logic. If somebody running away from you, all you have to do is stay in your car, call the police, call the people who are trained to deal with the situation, and you have no reason to say self-defense. I know they're dealing with the matter that I'm going to be in Jacksonville on tomorrow, Jordan Davis, where Jordan Davis was at the gas station and the person said they were playing the music too loud, and he had so many options. He could have rolled up his window. He could have called the police. He could have drove away. But he then tried to take the law into his own hands. You go up to Detroit, Michigan, where the young lady was in the, I guess, the accident and was knocking on the door. The homeowner comes to the door, and he could have called the police. He was in fear. He didn't have to open the door, but he opens the door and he blows her head off. In all these situations, they put themselves in harm's way and then say, I was standing my ground. And I tell you, brothers and sisters, the law is about precedents. Precedents. As we set precedents, others will say, well, if it worked for him, then it should work for me. And if we don't stand up and change these laws, if we don't go vote in these midterm elections, they're going to keep passing these laws, and they're going to keep getting away with killing our children. So we got to do more than just lip service. We got to go take a stand. You know, I think sometimes it's getting more challenging in this post-racial society now that we've elected our first African-American president. I think even more than ever now, we have to go vote down ballot, even when President Obama isn't on the ballot. Very important. And the thing I leave you with is we all have a role. We can't blame the victims. You know, Dr. Martin Luther King said, I have a dream that my children will be judged by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin. You know, Trayvon's birthday was yesterday, and I'm going out tomorrow night down to Miami to try to observe his remembrance with his parents and Kendrick Johnson's parents and Oscar Grant's parents, Futeville Station, the film about the young boy who was shot in Oakland, California, as well as Hadai Pendleton's parents, the young lady who was shot in the gun violence after she sung at President Obama's inauguration. And all these parents who lost their children. And I'm so honored that Tracy and Sabrina have decided that we're going to fight to preserve the legacy of our children. And we're not going to be silent, and we're not going to give way to hatred and violence, that we're going to do something positive for our child. And so they're going to have this peace walk with a lot of influential people like the Jamie Foxxes and the LeBron Jameses of the world. But more importantly, there are going to be thousands and thousands of young people walking in the name of peace, saying that you have a right to walk in peace. You have a right not to be profiled, to be stereotyped, to be prejudged just because of the color of your skin or the article of clothing that you're wearing. You know, this whole notion that if you wear a hoodie, you got to be a criminal. I keep trying to figure out why when they wear hoodies, they're not presumed to be criminals. It's just our children. Anderson Cooper told me every day he puts on a hoodie, jeans, and tennis shoes, and nobody has ever suspected him of being a criminal. Now, what is the difference when Trayvon Martin puts on his hoodie? When it's raining and it's cold, a lot like tonight. You know, and so we got to really stand up in our community and try to make a difference. And there's so many ways we can get involved. By being members of the Civil Rights Institute of Albany, in a small way, you're making a difference. And if you can do a little more, if you can make sure you go vote and bring somebody with you to vote, that helps. If you can go mentor a young person and just say that you have a right to exist on this earth because you are an American. You have a right to exist. And we're not asking for anything special. I conclude my talk with you all with quoting one of my personal heroes, and that's Justice Thurgood Marshall, who said that the basis of the American Constitution is that a black baby born to a black mama, the poetess, the dumbest, the most inarticulate black mama has the same exact rights as a white baby born to the most affluent, the most educated, most articulate white mama, just by virtue of that child being born an American. Justice Marshall said, I know that that's not where we're at in America, but I challenge anybody to say that's not a goal worth fighting for. I challenge anybody to say that's not what makes America the great beacon of hope and justice for all the world to marvel. So when we stand up for the Trayvon Martins of the world, when we stand up for the Kendrick Johnsons of the world, what we're really doing is making America live up to its creed, making America live up to the promises. Justice, equal justice for all. And that's what it's about, brothers and sisters. I hope I haven't taken too much of your time. I thank you for your attention. Please keep those families in your prayers. So many families, I can go on. In Little Rock, Arkansas, the family of Ernest Hoskins, who was shot point blank range by his employer. And this was right during the Thanksgiving holiday, after Trayvon and his mother and grandmother called me enraged out of their mind that his 38-year-old white employer shot this 21-year-old black male point blank range with 3 eyewitnesses there in his home, and 8 days had passed and they had still not arrested him. And it's these things that just makes no sense to us. Don't take my word for it. Google it. Google Ernest Hoskins when you get home, and Google Alicia Thomas in Los Angeles. Google Leon Ford in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I mean, it's our children. The rules are just different. On the Ernest Hoskins case, you know, even though he walked out the room, got the gun, pointed at his head, pulled the trigger, it didn't go off. He pulled it again, blew his head off. Mr. DA, in Little Rock, Arkansas, they allowed that to be manslaughter, which they said was an accident shooting, that he got put in prison for 10 years, and with good behavior, he's out in 2 years. What is the value of our children's lives? Can you imagine how Ernest Hoskins did that to his white employer, Christopher Reynolds? Can you imagine if they would have gave him manslaughter and not first-degree murder and sent him to the electric chair? Why are the rules different? The rules gotta be equal. They gotta be fair. It gotta be what Thurgood Marshall said. Just by virtue of us drawing our breath as Americans, we are given the rights of American citizens. And as Langston Hughes said, we too sing America. Thank you.